All right, last time I talked about the blind lead, which is a lead where basically you're holding out some piece of information. The next one is a roundup lead. A roundup lead is without information. But instead of focusing on 1%, maybe you're going to say how something's going to affect everybody. And so you're kind of rounding up all the information. An example of this might be, taxpayers will see their taxes go down. The students will see extra benefits. Parents will see children learning more. It's et cetera, et cetera. All of this because of a new method of teaching that promises better results with fewer resources and less need for investment or something. I don't know. I mean, we're basically, we're starting off with telling everybody that's involved. As an example here, like gamblers get more choices, smokers inhale cheaper cigarettes, and drinkers can hoist around to lawmakers who kept state alcohol taxes among the lowest in the nation. Even gluttons came out okay in the just-ended legislative session, which rejected efforts requiring more nutritious school lunches and more time in PE classes. Sin had a fabulous session, summed up the senator. Here's something where you've gotten everybody who's affected by everything the legislature just did. There's somehow it's going to benefit gamblers and drinkers and smokers and people with PE and other requirements. And so you've just said everything that's going on in the legislative session in just a couple sentences. And that's a nice, clear lead that, is maybe going to grab you on some aspect. It's holding up that, hey, there's a lot of stuff. People have been impacted instead of just emphasizing one person or trying to play it off with a blind lead or something else. You're kind of giving a little taste of everything that's going on. It's kind of the sampler lead where you're going, I'm going to tell you a little bit about everybody, and then I'm going to fold out the information for everything in this story. Direct address. This is one I put the word be careful on, because this one is one I kind of think that it's rare that it should be used. People might use it a little too often. Essentially, it's where you use the word you. But it doesn't have to be just you. It can be it can be where like as an example, it could be it could be just sort of speaking to the person without ever saying be aware that there's a problem. That's sort of a direct address. You're talking directly to the reader. You're using the you. But the idea here is occasionally there's a benefit, like you may find it hard to, you may find it a little difficult to get to work tomorrow because this road will be closed. Okay, it's a nice lead. It does tell you it's going to impact you. It kind of directly addresses you, and that's okay occasionally. And it is a good lead type. I think there are types that are better. You may be looking for a way to save on your taxes, or you may be doing this. Those are good ways. Or you can solve this problem. You can get that stain out. You can do this. It's a nice lead type on occasion. I think that it can also be, I like to think of it kind of as a little bit of a lazy lead type if you use it too much. I think it's good once in a while, but if you're using that lead type more than, once in a while, it's probably, you're probably getting a little lazy is what I would say. It can grab attention, but people don't constantly want to be talked to. People are reading the paper. They want to get news. Yeah, I mean, they like to find out things that are going to impact them. They want to find out things that are doing that, but you have to be careful with this type. First of all, you don't want to say you're going to have a hard time getting to work tomorrow because Chatham Road is going to be closed. Well, not everybody takes Chatham Road, so who the hell cares if you don't? So that would be an example, where one problem with the direct address. The other problem is I don't necessarily need to be talked to. You can just talk in a general form, and I understand that it impacts me or not. And so that's okay. So those are my kind of cautions. Direct address is a type where you break out and you talk to the person and you say, you may need to be careful about this. You may be impacted by this. You may be that. You break that, what in theater they call the fourth wall, where, the wall where the audience is. You kind of walk out and you talk to them. That is something that can happen. It's sometimes beneficial, but it's not always. So I just kind of caution you or warn you to be careful about that. Startling lead. A startling lead is made where you start with some really attention-grabbing information, like 1 in 4 Americans will get a STD. That's a true stat, and that's a great way to grab people. Springfield has the highest pregnancy rate among teens in the state. You're not really leading with the statistics or a study or where that information comes from. You're just grabbing them with the information. And you're going, Springfield is leading with teen pregnancies. You're just simply grabbing their attention. You're startling them. And that's not a bad lead type. There's a little bit of a joke, sometimes you'll see on TV about TV reporters who will go, "How your water may be killing you, this at 11. That kind of thing. And you got to be careful about being too startling, but a good startling lead, if you have a good startling fact, there's nothing wrong with leading with that. That is a good way to do it. Wordplay leads where you're just having a little fun. Maybe perhaps 2 words have similar sounds, so you're saying it. Maybe you want to use the sounds like arf, arf, arf. You just start off with that. Maybe you're going to start off with the fact that things are similar. Here's an example. For Germans trying to lose weight, the worst is yet to come. WURST, where it's basically maybe a story going to talk about sausage. Where there's something where worst and worst, WORST, sounds very similar. It's just a chance to use things that are interesting. There's nothing wrong if you have a good pun to use it up front. I'd be careful. You don't want to be too cute or too witty, because sometimes those things don't read well. If you're not comfortable, you probably need to be questionable. You probably want to ask an editor or a friend or somebody how they think it works, because what might make sense to you oftentimes doesn't make sense to others. It's sort of like, writing your own jokes or telling your own jokes. It can be difficult to do it. You have to be able to kind of get it in the other person's head quickly. All right, these I'm going to put under the sort of just bad lead types typically. I'm not going to say that they're always bad, but they're definitely leads you may want to try to avoid. There are 3 of them I want to speak about specifically. One is what's called a topical lead, where you're basically just telling the topic, like the city council met to discuss such and such. Sacred Heart Griffin took on Rochester last night or something. I don't know. I don't think they play, but basically you're starting out there with just sort of telling us what the topic of the thing is. It's sort of the difference between a title and a lead and a headline. A title will do something like "new study on pimples," and a headline, on the other hand, needs to kind of tell you what the study says. It says, "Pimples study finds pimples are worse than ever," or something. I don't know. These are not perfect examples I'm giving you. I apologize for that, but the idea there is like a topical lead is one where it just says "new study on pimples." It doesn't really tell you what's going on, and that's where it's telling you what went on, but it's not telling you what happened. I suppose it's giving you kind of just a title. It's just not really giving you enough information. There's an old rule in journalism: if you can write it before the event, then don't use it. That if you're going to say something like "the city council met last night," well, you could have told me the city council met last night before you even went to the city council meeting. So there's no real reason to write a story or a headline in which you tell people stuff like that really is nothing more than a thing on the calendar. Sacred Heart played such and such high school. Rochester played this. South. Or Lamphere played Springfield High. That kind of thing. All those are examples of just things that, you could have written beforehand. You knew it. You don't need to use and tell people things that they already could know. So it's not really a good lead. You want to kind of think, is there something new? Am I telling them the new news? Question leads. Question leads are also kind of what I kind of consider like the you leads. I didn't put you specifically those direct address leads. I didn't really give you those as a bad type, although I did say be careful. I probably put it in the questionable choice. Question leads are the same way, where instead of giving us information, you start off with a question. You know, the key here is tell us what's going on. Don't just ask a question. Sometimes these work, like they'll say, are you wanting to get more out of your clothes, or are you wanting to be able to save money? Are you wanting to do this? You know, have you ever wondered how, you know, what's the difference between a good marriage and a bad one? Have you ever wondered, you know, I mean, these are going to be all kinds of question leads. You know, they lead it and they ask you the question and you go, yeah, I am kind of curious. And then you lead into it. The problem is why don't you just tell us what you found instead of asking us about it? You don't need to ask us a question about it. Just start telling about the information. The question lead, people like it, you know, and sometimes I will get papers in my academics as well as even journalism papers where they'll put questions all the way throughout. Because this is a nice rhetorical device. You know, here are the questions I'm trying to answer. When will you get to find out about this? How will this work? What will this do? You know, those are questions you're answering, but you don't have to give me the questions. Just give me the answers. You know, I don't need the question. And that kind of lead is not necessary. I would caution here quickly that as far as question leads, I will caution that question leads are good in certain, yeah, I mean, occasionally they're good. Occasionally, I think more in feature writing, I think that they can be a decent way of doing it. But by and large, I think there's something you should try to avoid. You know, what I was going to say is I think they can be a little bit, I'd say, lazy. You know, sometimes you'll hear comedians and they'll say that, you know, cursing is a lazy comedian's way of getting laughs. Cases, people come out to a comedy club because they want to laugh, because they want to have a good time, right? And so if you get up there, and part of what comedy is, it's about being irreverent. It's about challenging norms. It's about kind of doing this. And so you're kind of getting in there and you're kind of tussling with these ideas and having a little fun. And so if you get in there and you curse a lot and, you know, you talk dirty and do things like that, talk about sex, talk about drinking, these are kind of easy ways to get a crowd. I mean, you got a crowd that's drinking. They're you know, maybe, you know, they're young, or maybe they're old, maybe, I don't know, but they, you know, I mean, they're there to have a good time. They're there to have some drinks. They're there to laugh. They're there to, you know, talk to their friends and maybe hit on girls or men, you know, men or women. You know, that's kind of the way comedy clubs are set up. And so for you to come out there and curse, it's kind of a lazy way to get laughs. This is a crowd that's gonna, you know, laugh and find that fun. And so, you know, some comedians will kind of see that as a lazy way to do it. And I would say question leads are in similar vein at times, in that they can be a lazy way to do this. Finally, you have a quote lead. Now, a quote lead is bad. Sometimes you get this really good quote and you think, you know, somebody says something like, "This is the worst thing that ever happened." And you think, oh, that's a good lead, you know. "This is the worst thing that ever happened," said Bill Smith, whose home was just destroyed by a tornado. Well, that's great, and it is a great quote. The problem is, by the time you put the attribution in there, it starts getting clumsy. The other thing is people sometimes learn with quote leads. And I know with students, I will get a quote lead every paper. I will get at least one. And I would caution you against it. Not from every student, but there will be one person probably in a class of 10 students, one or two people on most stories that will try a quote lead. The reason why it's bad, I'm going to tell you, is because, first of all, it can be clumsy. Second of all, you think it sounds great, but you also know what the whole story's about, and the reader doesn't. And so sometimes, like, people, when they talk, they just don't talk as clearly as you can if you're kind of realizing this is what I'm leading with. So you can probably do a better job. You can probably do better than most quotes. Even if it's a really good quote, you can probably do better. With a video, with a news report, like a canned video report, if they start off with somebody giving a quote at the very front, like, "This was a big problem," and then they start telling you what it's about, you know, maybe it grabs your attention a little bit, but you're also like, why in the world did they just start with that quote? You know, go ahead and put it in your own words. Now I'm going to pause this because I'm going to come back and finish it because I'm right at my time limit, but I want to talk just a tad bit more about quote leads and why you shouldn't use them when I come back.